Hello, Patriots. I'm Lee Watts, and this is Patriot Point, your source for Kentucky news and information from a conservative, Christian, and common sense point of view. Well, we had a few weeks off the air, been gone on vacation, got the batteries recharged, and now we're back on the air, baby, because the cause of liberty never stops. Well, this week we're going to be talking about something you're sure not going to hear on the mainstream media, and that is how there has been tons of money spent in Frankfurt by special interest groups trying to persuade your lawmakers. Yes, this year during the 90-day legislative session. Keep this in mind, the money I'm about to tell you about was all spent in 90 days. Special interest groups lobbied Kentucky lawmakers in 90 days with a whopping $11,130,780.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-chingery.
Wow, this is a record. This is the official number that has been put out by a report from the Legislative Ethics Branch Commission. Now, the previous record was back in 2018 when it was $10,670,000. Well, they busted that. They're now up to more than $11 million being spent to lobby Kentucky lawmakers in just 90 days. So we're going to look at this a few different ways. First of all, we're going to say, who is paying all of this money? Number two, who is getting paid? Number three, the problem with this, and most importantly, number four, the solution to this. First of all, who is actually paying this whopping sum of money? Well, the number one biggest person who is paying, this is a special interest, number one person spending money on politicians in Frankfurt, is the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. They spent a whopping $183,949. So just shy of $184,000. So this is supposed to be an organization which is designed to help Kentucky industry, Kentucky business. Let's look at some of the bills that they were lobbying on where they spent this $184,000 to find out if they're actually doing what they say or if they're doing the opposite. This is just a matter of the record. They opposed several different bills this year. One of them, they opposed the bill which was leading towards the elimination of personal income tax in Kentucky. Looks like they don't want to have that, even though other states which have this have greatly prospered. The legislature moving forward on this, despite the Kentucky Chamber pushing against it. Now, here's one that I found very surprising. This is a bill that the Chamber of Commerce lobbied against. It was a bill that would slash unemployment benefits right now. And they were able to defeat this bill. Now, wait a second. The unemployment benefits, a lot of this is paid by Kentucky businesses. And the reason that right now everybody is hiring is because we got so many people unwilling to work. Why? Because they're getting all these unemployment benefits. It makes, first of all, you get bad service because there's not enough people. There is limited hours. The cost of labor is unnaturally being elevated because of government interference. The politicians actually said, hey, we have some good conservative lawmakers that put through a measure that says, listen, we want to cut all these excessive unemployment benefits. It's not like they're getting rid of it entirely, just getting rid of this excessive unemployment benefits, which is causing a lot of the economic crisis right now. The Chamber of Commerce lobbied against doing that, and they defeated this bill, which is why we have many of the problems that we do nowadays. Seems to be the exact opposite of what would be in the best interest of Kentucky business owners. Let's talk about something else that they're doing. They lobbied against a bill. This is a bill that would require that the legislature would have to consider the cost to private industry of any new regulations. Now, that seems like a good idea. We had some conservative lawmakers came up with an idea, said, hey, we shouldn't be allowed to pass any new laws unless there's a study done which says this is the impact this is going to have on private industry. The Kentucky Chamber of Commerce lobbied against this bill and was able to defeat it. This is a bill which would help Kentucky business owners. And yet, this is a Kentucky Chamber of Commerce has spent nearly $184,000 lobbying against these different bills and killing these bills within a 90-day session. So that is the number one person paying up there in Frankfurt. Let's talk about the number two people who are the biggest payers up there in Frankfurt, trying to influence the politicians, and that is the Kentucky Hospital Association. They spent in excess of $149,000 lobbying our politicians. And one of the things that they had worked for, something I am very against, is this idea for certificate of need. Now, we are one of the very few states which has this. And the Kentucky Hospital Association is one of the reasons why. Certificate of need says you're not allowed to open up a little rural or county hospital here because you have to prove that there is a need for that. You know what this basically does? This protects all the big hospitals who are not necessarily close to the people from having any competition. It should be up to whoever's opening the little hospital to decide if this is going to be a profit-making, viable business or not. And this would be a great help to a lot of Kentuckians because you can have somebody open a small hospital or a small clinic like this in areas which are far away from the big hospitals. Would be a great help to the people, but the people willing to do this are prevented from this because of this law called Certificate of Need, and one of the big people lobbying for that is the Kentucky Hospital Association, number two biggest lobbyist up there in Frankfurt this year, spending nearly $150,000. Number three biggest lobbyist up there in Frankfurt is the ACLU. I call this the Anti-Conservative Liberal Union. Of course, we know what it really stands for. They spent $128,258 this year pushing their ultra-leftist policies, trying to lobby Kentucky politicians. These are some of the things the ACLU spent nearly $130,000 on. They tried to stop the Save Women's Sports Act, which is where they said men compete in men's sports, women compete in women's sports, and you're not allowed to lie and say you're the opposite and in order to compete. They lobbied against that. Kentucky State Legislature passed this bill anyway. Good for them. Glad you all did that. But the ACLU, of course, lobbied against it. They also lobbied against the pro-life bill, House Bill 3, pushing their very radical leftist abortion agenda. They also lobbied against any and every bill that would try to block this critical race theory teaching, which is teaching racism to Kentucky students. They were for that and tried to stop every single bill that put an end to it. That is the ultra-leftist ACLU for you. The number four people, we're going to do the top five. The number four was Pace-O-Matic, which is basically a gambling company. They spent more than $106,000 in 90 days, and they were able to stop. They had this bill that was going to stop it's not a slot machine, but it's like slot machines. Kind of this gray area, not quite, but almost. And they were going to ban that because multiple studies show that the people who actually lose money on these machines, spending money on it, are the poorest people in Kentucky, the people who can least afford it, that are trying against everything just to strike it rich. And they are taking advantage of those people. We had some good Christian conservative lawmakers trying to ban these machines. Pace-O-Matic spent $106,000 plus and was able to stop them from banning it. And the fifth and last one we're going to talk about in the top five, biggest spenders in Frankfurt this year, was Pharmaceutical Care Management, who spent more than $86,000. Yes, the pharmacy companies wanting to have their say. There were actually more than 20 groups that spent in excess of $50,000 in Frankfurt this year. So that is the top biggest people who are paying, but who is getting paid? I think this is very interesting and the people should know about this. The number one person who is getting paid is Mr. John McCarthy. Mr. John McCarthy is the former chairman of the Republican Party of Kentucky. He owns a lobbying group. Biggest client is a cigarette company, and he profited through lobbying this year. In simply 90 days, his company made in excess of $350,000.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-chingery.
What do you think about that? Not saying anything about it. I'm just asking you what you think about it. Well, let's talk about who is the number two person who benefited the most from the lobbying efforts going on in Frankfurt. And that is, drumroll please, Mr. Bob Babbage. Mr. Babbage is a former Democrat Kentucky state auditor. He represents multiple big pharmacy companies. He also represents the anti-gun crowd pushing what they call gun safety efforts. That's the we want to take your guns people. He made $279,500 in 90 days.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
That's a whole lot of money to be made by Big Pharma and the anti-gun crowd just to lobby Kentucky politicians in a 3-month period. Let's talk about who is the number 3 person making the most money up there in Frankfort lobbying, and that is Mr. Stephen Huffman. Mr. Stephen Huffman is the former chief of staff for the former Lieutenant Governor Stephen Pence. He represents mostly the horse racing industry, and he made about $252,000 in a 90-day period lobbying for them up there in Frankfort. Now, I will tell you the number 4 person, or it's really a group of people who are benefiting from the lobbyist, and that is some, not all, some of the politicians. Because what is happening is these different lobbying groups that are spending in excess of $11 million for only Kentucky state legislators. Keep this in mind. This isn't everybody everywhere. It's just the people up at the state house. More than 11 million in a 3-month period. So they'll go to these people and they'll be like, I can't necessarily give directly to that person. There's laws against that. But you know, the workaround is like, well, we'll just contribute to your campaign, and that will have great influence on what this kind of laws this person would be for or against. This is basically legalized bribery. Let me give you an example of this. Anybody who watches the channel knows I just finished a campaign for Congress running against Congressman Brett Guthrie, who has been donated to his campaign by the big pharmacy companies hundreds of thousands of dollars this year alone. Hundreds of thousands of dollars donated to your campaign. And of course, he writes all kinds of bills that would be a benefit for those industries. This is legalized bribery. This is wrong. If a company wants to lobby, I think they should be allowed to lobby. You can send your representatives to present evidence, to present logical arguments, but they should not be allowed to donate 1 red cent to the candidate, to their campaign, or anything associated with that. You want to lobby? Hire an army of people to go up there to present their arguments, to present logic, to present evidence. That's perfectly fine. The people can do that, but they shouldn't be allowed to donate to their campaigns or anything that the candidate or politician is involved in, because that is legalized bribery. So let me give you on what the Bible says about this. Notice what the Bible says in the book of Isaiah, chapter number 1 and verse number 23. Thy princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. Everyone loveth gifts and followeth after rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither doth the cause of the widow come unto them. So what the Bible's saying here, it says thy princes. That's people who are in government. They're rebelling against what's right. They're the companions of thieves. It means, hey, you're in there with the crooks. You love to take a gift. You love a reward. And they are interested in lining their pockets and not doing what is best for the people. So that is the dirty skunks who are doing this. Now, we do have some honest people in office. Believe it or not, there are a few. So this is the solution to this problem. I call upon those honest people who are in office today. Write a bill talking about the solution that we just mentioned, where lobbyists cannot give to the campaigns or anything associated with the politician or candidate. They can't give 1 red cent. Where Kentucky is desperately looking for someone to write such a bill. And you would be a great champion for the cause of integrity. And of course, everybody fighting against it would really be tipping their hand. So I'm looking forward to getting somebody up there who's willing to write just such a bill. So that's some of the news that I guarantee you're not hearing on the other news sources, the mainstream media, not talking about that. News from a conservative, Christian, constitutional, and common sense point of view, which is why I hope you'll hit the subscribe button, you'll share the video, make a comment, and tune into Patriot Point each and every week. So until next week, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point, reminding you that liberty is not a spectator sport.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-chingery.